In this video, we present 3 novel games designed to investigate the effects of embedding haptic feedback in Exergames. Exergames combine entertainment and exercise in an effort to encourage people to be more physically active. Examples include commercial games such as Wii Sports and Dance Dance Revolution, as well as academic games like Breakout for Two and Swan Boat. Haptic feedback conveys information to a person via applied forces or vibrations. We propose that haptic feedback is important in exergaming in order to engage the physical sensations that are a strong part of sports and other forms of exercise. We created 3 exergames to measure the effects of haptic feedback in exergames. All 3 of our exergames are distributed 2-player games. To interface with the games, players use a recumbent exercise bike attached to a computer with a serial connection. Games are projected onto a large display screen in front of each player. Music and sound effects are transmitted through audio speakers. The pedal race game was designed to investigate the relationship between haptics and people's sense of presence in game environments. In pedal race, players race virtual tricycles around a circular track. The first player to complete 3 laps wins the game. A player powers a tricycle by pedaling on an exercise bike. The faster a player pedals, the faster her tricycle will move. The virtual track is made up of 3 types of terrain, and pedal tension of the exercise bike changes according to each terrain. Tension is twice as hard as asphalt when traveling over the mud, and tension is half as hard when traversing the ice. Experimental results show that the haptic feedback allowed people to be more involved in the game. Additionally, the majority of players preferred the haptic feedback and felt it was more realistic compared to the visual feedback only. These findings indicate that haptic feedback increases people's sense of presence and enjoyment in the pedal race game. We created the truck pull game to test the effectiveness of haptic feedback on balancing multiplayer exergames. In truck pull, players engage in a virtual tug-of-war. Each player is represented by an on-screen truck connected to that of their opponent. After 1 minute, the player who has moved the trucks closer to her side of the screen wins. A player pedals a stationary bike in order to move the trucks. At each second, the trucks move in the direction of the player who is pedaling the fastest. Pedal tension of the exercise bike increases incrementally the more a player is able to move the trucks to her side of the screen. Alternatively, pedal tension decreases as the trucks are pulled away from a player's side. Experimental results show that the average distances to the start line were significantly lower in games of truck pull with haptics than without. Our findings indicate that haptic feedback can provide better balanced competition between players of disparate physical abilities, leading to more effective and enjoyable gameplay. The Balloon Burst game was designed to investigate haptic feedback for guiding players to safe and healthy levels of interaction. In Balloon Burst, players attempt to shoot as many on-screen balloons as possible. A player is awarded 25 points for each balloon she shoots. The player who has scored the most points after 2 minutes wins. A player uses the A button on an Xbox 360 gamepad to fire. Additionally, a player pedals on an exercise bike to control the rate at which her balloons are launched. The faster the player pedals, the more quickly balloons are launched. To ensure that a player does not overexert themselves, pedal speed should remain below 80 rotations per minute. If a player exceeds this limit, no balloons will be launched until her pedal speed drops below the maximum cadence. A player receives haptic cues regarding her physical exertion via the gamepad. The closer a player's pedal speed is to the maximum cadence, the faster the gamepad will pulse. If a cadence of 80 RPMs is exceeded, the gamepad vibrates continuously to notify the player to slow down. Experimental results show that the haptic cues in Balloon Burst were as effective as visual feedback for guiding players to effective levels of intensity. Our findings indicate that subtle haptic cues can guide players to levels of exertion that are both safe and beneficial to their health. Experiments with our 3 games reveal that haptic feedback increases players' sense of virtual presence, provides better balanced competition between players, and guides people to safe and healthy interaction. These findings suggest that haptics should be considered by designers in order to improve the overall effectiveness of exergames.